All right. Yes. Here we are back. Just about 4:30. Very, very warm Wednesday. But I also want to weigh in on the news that we have received. We're going to let everybody slowly file in. The number keeps getting bigger. Haven't done one of these in a while. But I want to share some thoughts on this news that broke yesterday. Now, again, we'll let everybody start to climb in. Yes, and I know people. Listen, my intent is to do this on a regular basis, but at the same time, trying to enjoy a little bit of the summer, and then, quite frankly, like a lot of other people, you want to take a break from a lot of the nonsense. And as many of you know, I mean, if there's one case that has a lot of nonsense, it's anything with the name Karen Reed attached to it. But I want to add some perspective, which I think I can. I know yesterday, some people went to great lengths, and there's a lot of speculation on what happened. And I want to take you through what I'm noticing, and I think you'll find it helpful. Hi there, Linda. There's Mary D. Debbie, of course, is our mainstay. But what I'm talking about, of course, is federal officials charge a grand juror in the Karen Reed investigation with leaking information. So, a couple of things that I want to just touch on. And this is this woman, Jessica Leslie, who is going to be appearing in court, I believe next week, next Tuesday. And what do we know about that? Well, there's a couple of things that I want to touch on that jump out. And with this type of format, I can also be interactive, where I can see questions, can answer questions. If you're on Facebook, of course, we love the stars. If you're on YouTube, you can do the super chats. But one of the first things that jumped out at me is Shelley Murphy of the Boston Globe has a lot of details. So I recognize that a lot of people can question the Boston Globe. But Shelley Murphy, I've interviewed her in the past. She's a very knowledgeable Shelley Murphy of the Globe. Now that is an investigative reporter. So Shelley Murphy of the Boston Globe, who I believe was one of the first ones to tie it, because I know some people are saying, oh, how do we know what case it is, right? And we don't know if it's tied to Karen Reed. Well, Shelley Murphy of the Globe has it in the headline. Federal officials charge grand juror in Karen Reed investigation with leaking information. So I'm telling you right now, if Shelley Murphy is putting her name there, Shelley Murphy of the Boston Globe, she's not going to put some information, number one, that's not accurate, but number two, no one is going to, that means someone established. She's dealing with someone established. Now, the first two news outlets to confirm this that I saw yesterday was Shelley Murphy of the Boston Globe, that immediately said it was grand juror in the Karen Reed investigation, and the other one was Aaron Katursky of ABC News. So what does that tell us? Well, who's at ABC News who's very plugged in? Pierre Thomas. Pierre Thomas of ABC News is very plugged in. He's not local. He's a national reporter. So one of the first things that jumped out at me was whoever is signing off, you're not going to have Aaron Katursky of ABC News, who I actually think it's probably, and I know Aaron Katursky, by the way, probably Pierre Thomas of ABC News. So Shelley Murphy of the Boston Globe and Pierre Thomas, folks, they have both been around for a very long time. So someone in a position of power is not going to lead them astray. It's not a fringe that went with this, right? Now, keep in mind, something that's also, and I want to just share with you some things. And right now, again, we're live on Facebook, we're live on X, we're live on YouTube. But notice this story, so much of the Reed stuff was, as we know, independent, blogger, blah, blah, blah. But this was traditional media. This was traditional media. This bombshell was not broken. Think of this. Think of all the different people that have covered or have, spent hours on the Karen Reed trial. This was basically, this story took off with what we would consider traditional media. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But if you are, think of what we're saying here. Federal officials, a Dracut woman who sat on the federal grand jury, and I know that's a little confusing to people, has been charged criminal contempt. Now, right now, they're still saying allegedly leaking information. Well, but she's going to enter a guilty plea. So she was charged. This was Friday. What happened? What does that tell you about Friday? There were no leaks. There were no leaks here. What has been a huge problem all along with the Karen Reed situation were all the leaks. No leaks here. Jessica Leslie, 34 years old, charged Friday, federal court, 1 count of criminal contempt, and agreed to plead guilty. Did anyone break the story on Friday? No. Anyone break the story over the weekend? No. Monday? No. When did it break? Tuesday. No leaks. That's important. That tells you it's airtight. An announcement by U.S. Attorney Leah Foley and Ted Dox, special agent in charge of the FBI Boston office. What I am stressing to you, notice, is that, hi, Ron Marshall, is that think of all these different YouTube creators and blah, 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 and none of them broke it. Traditional media. Now that tells me, I don't know, Shelley Murphy of the Boston Globe, she writes, according to 2 people familiar with it. 2 people with it. So, however, 2 people familiar with the allegations confirmed she was accused of leaking information related to Reed's case. So let's just take that for a moment. Let's take that just for a moment. So 2 people familiar with the Reed case. So right away, I'm going to say that Shelley Murphy of the Boston Globe, and again, you can go online. If you Google Karen Reed and these, types of stories come up, it's the lead first ones were the Boston Globe and also, as I mentioned, ABC News, which leads me to believe that's Pierre Thomas. But I want to go through. Now, again, Channel 5, definitely. Then others pick up on it. But I'm talking about out of the box. Like first ones out. Who had the info? And I want you to understand, as someone of the press, if I'm trying to look at a story and trying to figure out, is this legitimate? If I see Pierre Thomas of ABC's fingerprints on it, so to speak, Aaron Katursky, he covers all the major cases. He's not putting out information that unless he has it rock solid. And the same goes with Shelley Murphy of the Globe. This was not somebody on Facebook. This was not somebody on YouTube. This isn't someone just online. Traditional sources, no leak. So that's telling us a lot. But I want to just skim through this a little bit. And again, I'm going to go to the Globe. 1 count of criminal contempt, has agreed to plead guilty. So certainly had a lot of information out of the box. The plea agreement signed by Leslie yesterday. So the story came out after she agreed and signed it. So what does that tell us? It tells us that, and again, I don't know, but someone who would be familiar that she had signed it then gives the green light that the story's in play, so to speak. There's another really good clue here, but let me just get through it. Plea agreement signed by this Leslie. It says the government defense have agreed to recommend she be sentenced. Now, again, I agree. When you see 1 day deemed served, she will not spend any time in prison if the judge adopts the recommendation. The judge could veer off that, highly unlikely though. But she's accused of disclosing sealed information about the secret grand jury between August 11th of 2022 and March 4th of 2024. And let me just, including, this is really important, the names of various witnesses who appeared before the grand jury, the substance of their testimony, and other evidence presented to the grand jury. So let's just talk about that just for a moment and go through the timeline. August 11th of 2022. So this happened, as we know, in January of 2022, right? Through that spring, it's, for the most part, it's pretty quiet. It happened, and then like a lot of other stories, it starts to fade. So the grand jury picks up August 11, 2022 to March 4th, 2024. Thank you, Artworks. We don't know that. We're going to get to that, but that's a good question. But keep in mind, this thing didn't explode until April of 23. So now, grand juries, they're listening to a lot of different things. So they start and they sit for clearly quite a period of time. But that's really significant. What I just read to you is really significant. And here's why. Because you have to ask yourself, and I want to be very clear. I'm not jumping out. Everyone, listen, everyone can jump out any way they want. We're going to go cautious with the story. But here's what you have to ask yourself. Who would be interested in the names of various witnesses and the substance of their testimony? That is so key. Who would want to know who are the witnesses and the substance of their testimony? Now, the grand jury proceedings were between August 11, 2022 and March 4th of 2024. It doesn't say exactly when this stuff came out. But I think that's, who would be interested in that? Now, you also have to remember, or maybe I shouldn't say remember, because a lot of people may not be, realize. Listen, there's ethics that go along. Attorneys, they're not prize fighters. They're in there as officers of the court. They're supposed to behave in a certain way. Now, let's go to the ARCA testimony. Remember, before ARCA came to testify at this last trial, the retrial, Hank Brennan had pushed it, and we learned that ARCA, they were communicating with apparently Alan Jackson through the app Signal. So that's really interesting, because what also really stood out to me is when Attorney Jackson in the first trial, and he had that Dr. Wolf on the stand, and that guy is like, there's just obviously there's something odd about it. Their whole dynamic has always been odd. I don't know what to make of it. But when Jackson first had him on the stand in the spring of 24, he started with, have we ever met? And what did Dr. Wolf say? No. Okay, we haven't met. Have we ever talked on the telephone? The answer again was no. I want you to really understand what's happening here. This isn't an accident. Jackson is saying, have we ever met? No. Have we ever talked on the telephone? If we haven't met, have I ever talked to you on the telephone? No. What did we learn? What did we learn about ARCA? They were communicating with the Signal app. Now, Jackson didn't say, Have we ever communicated? He didn't say that. See, it's by design. These things are not accidents. It didn't happen that way. It didn't say, you know what? Hey, this is good that we were communicating with the Signal app, because then if we're ever asked, I can ask you and you can answer honestly, have we ever met? No. Have we ever talked on the telephone? The answer is no. Now, at the time, Lally sat there. Hank Brennan got to the bottom of it. But my point is, that wasn't an accident. You need to understand, this is by design. They set in motion, the two of them, to use the Signal app. He's like playing chess, a step ahead. They use the Signal app to be able to say, have I ever met you? I don't think we've met. Have I ever met you? No, we've never met. Have I ever talked to you on the telephone? No, we've never talked on the telephone. Hank Brennan, when he had the voir dire and asked that little snake from Arca, do you ever communicate through the Signal app? That guy, Dr. Wolf, still kept saying, I had never met with Alan Jackson. We never spoke on the telephone. I'll swear to it. We've never spoken on the phone. Did you communicate with him through the Signal app? Oh, yeah, no, we communicated through the Signal app. But I didn't talk to him on the phone, and we never met. Folks, do you see? It's by design. That wasn't an accident like that. So I know a lot of people are racing to, this is an odd story. And I want to, people have been asking me, how come you're not saying anything? And I get that. But because there's still a lot that we don't know that happened here. But we're not done yet. There's still things about this. Now, again, I'm going to go back to, and someone could say, I've been told, you should listen to Shelley Murphy of the Globe. I'm telling you, she's solid. Shelley Murphy of the Boston Globe is not, whoever's giving her the information is not going to make her look like an idiot, and she's not going to be made to look like an idiot. They're not getting it from some random person. So here's what you have to ask. Who would want to know the names of the various witnesses? Who's being questioned by this grand jury? And just to back up for a moment, for those that are unsure, because of the Sandra Birchmore case, someone got the feds to look into this, said, hey, there's a local connection here. They did. That's how Proctor got in trouble. They didn't find anything. It cost Proctor his job, caused a lot of embarrassment. But who is it that would want to know what's happening with the witnesses? I think that's really interesting. The names of various witnesses who appeared before the grand jury and the substance of their testimony and other evidence presented. Who would that be valuable to? That is, right now, that is an unknown. But what really jumps out at me, two people familiar confirmed. She's accused of leaking information related to the Reed case. So that narrows it down. I recognize some other people. By the way, I've noticed that some people, other people, have adopted. Notice, like, you can't just listen to what they say. You listen to what they're not saying. For instance, someone else says, someone else could say, I've never met Jessica Leslie, and I've never talked to her on the telephone. Doesn't mean they haven't communicated. The question is, have you ever communicated or communicated through someone? I've never met the person, and we've never spoken on the phone. That's a pretty definitive statement. But then you get into, but have you ever communicated? Third party. Was there someone, a go-between? Again, a lot of times these things are done by design. I cover crushing just to the person simultaneously convinced that as long as no one could step forward and say they put cash in his hand that he could never be convicted. So he came up with, this was a ploy of kind of like, when you go to fast food, you order here, then you pull up and you pay at the first window, and then you get your food at the second window. So it's like a 3-part process. You pull up, can I welcome, can I help you? Like that. Then you go, all right, pull up window 1, pay. Okay, then your food's at the next one. So he was convinced no one is going to step forward and say, they put money in my hand. He had a system. It didn't exactly work out, but he had a system where he was borrowing money from certain people, and then he had people going and delivering them the money. It worked for a period of time. So my point is, there's always different schemes that people, if you ever watch The Wire, right? There's the kid that comes up, they're on the corners and they're doing the deal, but that's not who has the drugs. So the kid in The Wire, all right, what are you looking for? Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, okay, $100, $50, whatever it is, takes it. Then he signals to someone else. Then they drop it off. So my point is, there are certainly other people. That's how people, yes, The Wire. Learn a lot by watching The Wire. Clay Davis. So a couple other things that jump out. So let's just be sure about something. Number one, this is related to that. Now, it does seem odd. It seems like a light penalty. Would the feds get involved if she mentioned it to someone at work? Okay, I don't think so. Would the feds get involved if this Jessica Leslie was out drinking with some friends and started talking about it? That's not what they're alleging. So she's accused of the names of various witnesses, the substance of their testimony, and other evidence. This seems more organized to me. This isn't, hey, you weren't supposed to say anything. This isn't a coworker. Again, I don't know this person. I don't know where they work. It's not someone at the other cubicle. I think I heard her on the phone. She was out having some drinks. Number one, it's definitely the Reed story. This seems a little more detailed to me. This sounds a little more organized. So you're talking about disclosing sealed information, names of witnesses, substance of the testimony, and other evidence presented. That's not just talking about it. To me, the way I read this, that's not loose lips at happy hour. That's not, hey, you're never going to guess what I've learned. This seems, would they really go after that? Would that really be criminal? Right? Someone says, I was out drinking and I could hear the person at the table next to me talking about it. That's not what they're alleging. They're alleging that disclosing sealed information, that sounds more organized to me. Officials did not disclose that she was sitting on the grand jury. However, 2 people familiar with the allegations confirmed she was accused of leaking information. Attorney Keith Halprin, who represents Leslie, declined to comment. Now, what does that tell us? Well, number one, how would you know who it is? How would you know who her attorney was? Again, that's somebody was led in the right direction. He didn't have a statement ready. She signed it Tuesday. He was contacted. He could have said, what could he have said? He could have said, this Keith Halprin. I don't know who it is, this attorney. Not going to comment. Could have said she's cooperating fully. Could have said no, she is not guilty. Well, they're not doing that. She's agreed to plead guilty. She's been charged in an information. Federal charging document signals a plea agreement has been reached. And then it goes through the whole thing. I'm pretty sure the ABC story even said that when they reached him, he wasn't. Let me just find that. I'm pretty sure I read her attorney now that it sounds like her attorney was caught off guard. He may not have realized how quickly this thing was going to move. So she signs it, and suddenly there's a reporter on the line. Now, a lot of these attorneys, they're always answering their own phone. They don't know. It could be someone on the other line that suddenly needs an attorney right away. Jessica Leslie of Draken. Let me just find that. Hold on. I know I read that. Sources confirmed it to ABC News. That's so we got the Globe, Shelley Murphy, who was very instrumental. I mean, she was Black Mass. Let me find I know I found it. I know I saw that, and that struck me as, okay, so he didn't have time to put a statement together. He didn't know he should put a statement together. He the attorney, he's never handled anything like this in his life. By the way, the thing about the federal system is there are certain attorneys that, sources confirm the case to ABC News. That's high up. Do you understand? That's not even Channel 5. That's ABC News out of New York. There are certain attorneys that only practice, by the way, I know that seems odd, but in the federal system, like that's their specialty. I don't know enough about him. I'll find it. I know that when the attorney that was mentioned was reached, I think another news outlet, he even said he hadn't had time to look it over yet. That's when you know that they've, really been thrown off. So I want to be, and I'm going to come back to this. So we do know that it's the Reed case. It is. Now, who would be interested in that information? I mean, if people want to say, is she leaking it to someone at the DA office? I find that extremely hard to believe. Where's this guy? All right, he has an office in Wellesley. He's done a couple. I'm seeing he was also involved. Cannon Grant attorney. Okay. But let me get back to this, folks. So listen, I know it sounds big. Is there more to come? I believe it sounds like it. It doesn't sound that it's a one and done. It does not sound that way. Now, this has definitely been quiet. So let's again review. There were no leaks, right? This went on Friday. No one had it. No one had it Friday. No one had it Monday. This story broke yesterday. And the people that broke it made sure that major outlets got it. That's number one. I know there's speculation of who could be going, with this. I think you have to look at why would someone want to downplay that it has to do with Karen Reed? Why would someone want to downplay the significance? Why would someone say, no, it's not about this case? Who are they talking to that would say it's not about this case? If someone is talking to ABC News, someone is talking to Shelley Murphy of the Globe, they're not going to give them false information. You have to look at, what else I want to touch on? Maybe I shouldn't be amazed at this point. So I don't know yet. I'm just still amazed. Maybe I shouldn't be. Is there's some people that still don't get that there are some people out there that are tied in with this, that are pathological liars. Notice also, Karen Reed's not talking. Karen Reed hasn't said a word. Karen Reed walked out of that courthouse. Alan Jackson's done a lot of talking. He's done a lot of talking. As a matter of fact, he's doing basically all the talking. I thought he was firing he's been throwing some bombs from the West Coast, right? You know, that struck me odd. He was pretty aggressive for a guy that's back out in LA. You know, his reputation enhanced. He's got the movie, the book deal. What did he learn? You know, why is he angry? Why is he throwing bombs at people? Why is he going after, you know, the Boston police officer? Why did he take shots at Hank Brennan? Why, you know, what's behind that? I found that a little odd. The stuff in Vanity Fair. It was a little, definitely spiking the ball in the end zone. He didn't just get out of town like, hey, just glad we got the win. No, that's, you know, he's running up the score a little bit. I found that odd. Why would he be concerned about that Boston police officer, Kelly Devers? I think that's a little, how come he's doing it? How come Yannetti's not doing it? Notice Yannetti's gone quiet. Notice the Boston media. It wasn't broken by the traditional Karen Reed Boston media, right? Ted Daniel didn't have it. He was riding around with them during the Super Bowl time. He didn't have it. Others didn't have it. No, this is a little bit different. Whoever is behind this. Now, again, I want to be very cautious here. Maybe there is more to come. I don't know what to think at this point. I don't. Is it a pleasant surprise? Could it be leading to bigger things? I think some of the actions of people, you know, there's a lot of people mixed up with this case. They think they're so smart, but they weren't so smart 2 years ago and 3 years ago. Why would someone do that? You're sitting on a federal grand jury. Someone just decides to tell their friends. Is that really charges? How often, I don't know. How often is there maybe a family party and the brother-in-law drinks too much and starts talking about he's a, you know, whatever, sitting on a grand jury somewhere, and someone who doesn't like the brother-in-law calls and says, hey, we had a party last night, my brother-in-law, blah, blah, blah. No, they're charging her. This sounds that it was organized. They're not, it doesn't sound like a one-off. And I want to come back to, you know, this does become a credibility thing, because right now, ABC News, Aaron Katersky, I'm going to guess the Justice Department correspondent, been there forever, Pierre Thomas. I got to think he's signing off on it. He could get it in a phone call. So Shelley Murphy, as I said, I don't want to be a broken record. You could just say the Globe, but I look at who is it that broke it. Who is it that broke it and who didn't break it? No, you can always tell when stuff comes from like the Reed side. And keep in mind, why is she so quiet? She's been really quiet. Jackson's been loud. Jackson throws haymakers, but his business partner has been very, very quiet. But this seemed to, I don't know. Maybe some people weren't shocked by it, but there's certainly, no one was talking about it. This seemingly caught a lot of people off guard. So is there more in the works? Now, keep in mind, they don't exactly work quickly, right? The feds do not work quickly. They work on statute of limitations. They work on, you know, they take their time. They don't bring charges unless they're very, very confident. Notice she's not testing this out. This Leslie, this juror, she's not testing this out. She's not taking this to court. Nope, she's taking the deal signed in front of her. So they They don't take cases unless they're very confident about the win. And that's how they approach. There's that great scene in The Wolf of Wall Street when they talk about Grenada and they say to Jordan, "You're Grenada." Like, we have you. That's how they operate. And they can down be absolutely could be other people tied in with this. I'm not there yet. I'm not ready to say this means A, B, and C. Folks, we've been disappointed before. It is significant. It's definitely tied in with the Reed case. So let me step back for a moment. So be cautious of anyone that's trying to, there are people seemingly trying to throw people off the scent. No, it's not about that. Not about that. I agree. There's some people, for whatever reason, they continue to follow. People, why not be open to the fact that there could be some people who have not been truthful about the whole thing? So, and I'm going to step out of this just for a moment, but look at the Jeffrey Epstein situation. Now, I wasn't vested in that. I would occasionally follow it here and there. I mean, I knew who he was and stuff with Prince Andrew and so forth, but not like I didn't realize there's a whole underground of people that they thrive off of that. And like, to me, that's a good example. Like, did it ever occur to some of these people that some of the conspiracy people that were pushing that there's a list, there's video, there's did it ever occur to them that maybe that was not true? You always have to pivot back to that. So, is it possible that some people connected with this have not been truthful? That maybe they were more involved, or maybe I don't know. On this one, I want to wait to see how this plays out. Now, there are some positives here. The positives are that clearly this didn't come down during the trial, and it's not September. So this has been kind of bubbling a little bit. Maybe 4th of July after the trial, vacations, and then suddenly, this hits. Are there going to be more individuals? Again, I want to go back to what we know so far, which is it's not someone was sneaking things out that they weren't supposed to. It doesn't sound like, based on the statements, again, I'm going to pivot to the two news sources that I think are very credible. Doesn't sound like someone had too much to drink and started spouting out, right, at a girls' night or whatever. It sounds more that who was the other party? Who wanted that information? Now you can step back and say there's some pretty good suspects, but let's let this play out. Maybe but did they operate in a way? Was there a third party? I at this point, I am so hesitant to just. I know some people are full blast that this means the following. I'm not there. I'm not there yet. I think, and these things can go on for a while. I've covered federal investigations. Again, they're in no rush. You may be in a hurry. They're not in a hurry. It is for those that are in the middle of it. It's excruciating. It is torture because it just goes on and on. I agree that immediately pleading guilty and just one day in jail, I agree with people that say it sure sounds like someone cooperating. And again, if your approach saying, listen, you're not the one we're looking for, right? Who approached you on this? Who are you giving it to? And then we don't know what conversations that those people have had. We don't know. So they're very thorough. Keep in mind, Proctor didn't know that they were lifting the stuff off his phone. They didn't go to him and say, hey, we want your phone. They lifted that stuff, as far as we know, off the cloud. So they could be sitting on stuff that people that could be in trouble. that they don't even realize. Many times they think that they covered their tracks with it. I want to pivot back to Alan Jackson. He definitely thought he had covered his tracks with the ARCA situation because they used a signal app. And after the first trial, they did get away with it. It wasn't until Hank Brennan dragged it out that then they caught them with that. The signal app is an encrypted app, so you can never really see the communication. So someone like Jackson, the ARCA, ARCA on the stand, Hank Brennan said, well, how many other clients have used it with? Never. So maybe it's a Jackson thing. Maybe he uses that with his clients. I was communicating with someone just the other day, and they said, well, are you on the Signal app? I don't know. I've never tried it. Maybe I'll get it. But it was someone who, it's really a different story. It's a different story. But someone highly paranoid, but a different story. But so I'm not sure what to make of this yet. But it sure sounds, I would think they want to be interested in who is it that was getting leaked information. Who was, what was the point? What was the motivation? Now, the juror, this Jessica Leslie, why was she doing it? Right? Was she paid? What was in it for her? Why do people do stuff like that? I've dealt with whistleblowers. A lot of times, who gives information? Someone that doesn't actually like where they work, someone that felt they were passed over for a promotion, someone that has an axe to grind against the company. There's various people sometimes. There's always usually a profile of who it is that's willing to, leak the documents. Sometimes there's someone that wanted the job and they got passed over, and so they start getting information. So that is something we don't know. This Jessica Leslie, who contacted her? Who has she been in touch with? Why did they bring her out now? They could have gone all summer with her. Has she communicated with people? Did she agree to cooperate first? Let's play this out. Was she wearing a wire? Was she communicating with someone and they didn't know that she was, compromised? Why did they bring it now? I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns. Leah Foley and Ted Dox know. I think that's interesting. Also, his name is there. Special agent in charge of the FBI Boston office. They want to right the ship on this thing. But why would someone do that? Why would someone? You have all these people on the federal grand jury. Why did this person, who was about to plead guilty, Jessica Leslie of Draken, what was the motivator? Why would you do that? What was in it for her? Was she, I don't know the reason, but I think that's important. Her motivation for doing it, that's important. Who would it be important to find out who the witnesses were and what were they saying? Now, keep in mind, this has to do with the grand jury over a pretty extended period of time. August 11, 2022 and March 4th of 2024. So what do we know about that? We know that fall is when Alan Jackson entered the scenario, the picture. We know that this case and Karen Reed's version, by the way, when you talk about liars, it begins and ends with Karen Reed. I mean, people that really want to pay attention, we know. It's not even worth wasting time anymore. It's not. We know she made it up. Anyone that follows it knows she made it up. Someday, maybe other people will learn that she made it up. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe this is the new fantasy land, right? Her movie, One Voice. I think that was the working title. But so we don't know when this came into play, but I'm pretty sure, I know that spring, you definitely had people that then testified at the first trial who were obviously testifying there. So I think that's a fair question. I mean, it's a pretty short list. Who would be motivated to know who was testifying? What were they saying? And don't forget, they're also alleging an evidence presented. That's more than just who would be interested in the evidence. That's more than just a passing, wow, that sounds interesting, right? Trying to impress somebody. Sounds a lot more than that. Again, there is, if there are still people, again, they can believe whatever they want. I mean, I think this is one of those things over a period of time. I believe over a period of time, those that want to accept and realize what had happened here will. But some people want to live in fantasy land. Some people are more content in fantasy land, by the way. There are. But what do we know? It's definitely the Reed case. That's number one. Why would someone try to throw people off the track? Who would be motivated to tell people, oh, it's no big deal. Has nothing to do with that. Oh, this is nothing to worry about. Who reacts that way? How about the mayor in Jaws? This was a boating accident. Don't worry about it. We'll be open on the 4th. You don't want to panic. You don't want to panic the tourists. This is nothing to see here, folks. Just move along. I don't think so. But at the same token, I'm not ready to go to the mat that this means DEFCON 5 or DEFCON 1, whatever's the more serious. And it's going there and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know about that. So, folks, that is my take. I know some other people have, everyone has different angles on it. I think this is a really interesting development. This, I want to see how it plays out. I also get, again, there are some people that are going to be confused by this. Some people think, aha, see, now they're coming in for the people in the house and blah, blah, blah. That's not what this is. I can't deal with that type of foolishness anymore. I can't. Maybe some other people can. I cannot. But I think this has a certain tone to it. Remember, maybe it's quiet till Labor Day. Maybe next month there's another shoe drops. Possible. I don't know. Maybe sometimes, remember, the thing about they can be, if they're right up to the end, but they quite don't have it, they just don't move forward with it. They just don't. So, folks, the intention is that we will, that's right, we will move into, I think we'll start doing this each weekday, probably more in the fall, definitely with the Brian Walsh case. But in the meantime, it's very warm here in the Northeast. Thank you to all our moderators. And folks, stay cool on this Wednesday.